was a correctional officer at a supermax prison. It was near Florence, Colorado. I stayed as an employee there for half a decade. I saw most everything you can imagine. Escape attempts, stabbings, riots, sharp weaponry that was hidden in places you would rather not visualize. That's only some of the more unpleasant occurrences I've dealt with in the past. Currently writing this from an encrypted Wi-Fi from an undisclosed safe location. I've had a change of careers following the events of the tale I'm about to share with you now. I hope that people thinking about becoming prison guards read my story and reconsider any future life choices they will look back on as a mistake. The warden called me into his office on a Monday. During the entire walk there down the hallways, I thought of the trouble I could be in. Shut the door, he said, as he looked up at me from his desk after I entered. Those words sealed it in my mind of how much hot water I was in for some sort of infraction I was not yet aware of. Bureaucratic and micromanaging and constant procedural changes were nothing new to me. I still hated petty political grievances. I nodded and sealed the entranceway, and he demanded I take a seat, so I did. He told me, "You're the best officer here." I waited for the but. I anticipated news of termination. I saw a forced transfer to a mundane position, filing paperwork headed on my way. "I want to give you the opportunity," he said. You'll make $600,000 in 1 year. Your benefits will remain unchanged. You would have less oversight than what is presented for you now. You would be in a leadership position, albeit an isolated one. That sounds ideal, I said as my mind swam in the possibilities of how much profit he offered. There are only two things I ask of you. One is that you cannot tell anybody about your new position. Two is you locate somewhere else. There's a prison in the Arctic, and that is where your life will be for the next 365 days. The confusion must have been readable on my face. If your wife asks, tell her that you're going to a federal academy. There's no cell service or Wi-Fi there. Any contact you would make with her must be through snail mail. We will handle the address as given if you decline this offer. And this conversation never happened. Do you understand? I contemplated my pros and cons before I became law enforcement. I was a bodyguard. I was gone from the house for extended periods. Even though it would be time with the wife lost, the fortune would help us greatly. I agreed. The prison facility was a large compound not bigger than the place I had patrolled before. A few things jumped out at me as I first laid my eyes on the populace there. They all had wounds on their face and they spoke a strange guttural language I was unfamiliar with. Why do they talk in such a bizarre tongue, I asked myself as I'd walked down the blocks. The new warden I worked under had the name Buckley. He had noticeable scar tissue beneath his eyes. His attitude towards me at the beginning was hardly welcoming. If anything, he acted as though I was a burden. He seemed to resent me due to the mere possibilities of having to train me on things. One evening, Buckley ordered me to do a cell extraction. Christopher Aluko was the name of the inmate we had to deal with. On the walk there, I asked my boss what Aluko had done to end up here. He told me, "I'm not allowed to tell you what these scumbags have accomplished to wind up here." He started his career in crime by cannibalizing his sister, though tonight our goal is to get him moved over the hole. He's proven himself to be way too dangerous to share space with anyone. The door of the cell was closer to an insane asylum than a prison. There were complete barriers that you could not see through. It was me and 3 other guards who were about to deal with this high-profile detainee. The supervisor was present, doing the things the bosses generally do. That is to say, he remained standby and did not get his hands dirty. Upon walking in, the first thing I saw was Luco sitting upright on his cot. I noticed he was huge, at least 6'8", and 320 pounds of pure muscle. His skin cracked all over. His face had the normal scar that I associate with most people in this place. I told him, "I'm gonna need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back." Kept my hand near the holster where my pepper spray was. "Show me respect, and I'll show you the same," I continued. "You won't have handcuffs on you for long if you cooperate." Lugo looked at me. "You are not better than me." His voice had a baritone quality, which I expected from a man of his size. What I did not was how weird it sounded. It was as though 4 or 5 people were chanting the words in unison. "All right," I told him. "Let's get you moved to where you need to go. The faster we do this, the better off we'll be." After I said that, Lugo said something I would have never imagined. "You shot at someone in broad daylight when you were a gang years ago. It took 10 years for the paranoia to go away. Fear of the cops coming to arrest you for a potential murder before you became the low-grade one yourself. This day, you don't know if any innocent civilians got caught in the crossfire. We had to strain his huge arms and place the metal bracelets on his wrists. He laughed all the while. As we brought him to solitary, I thought of his words and how much they unsettled me. They were true, and the story from my past was one I did not tell anybody. Near the end of the shift, Buckley went into the sniper towers and smoked a cigarette. Since my duties for the third day was complete, I took the spiral staircase to the level he stood on. When I saw him, only mere inches away from him where he puffed a cigarette. He did not seem to mind or even care about the footsteps behind him. He focused on the distance and the lowering winter sun. "The caged animal back there. Something which he shouldn't have," I told him. "Part of this job is having thick skin," he said as he flicked a cigarette over the edge into the snow. He turned around and faced me. "It's not about that," I said. "Do you hear your poor little feelings?" He had insight into my past no one has. I said as a bitter taste filled my mouth. "Well, that's unfortunate. It means you lied to the Aura board when you got into the position you're in now. You shouldn't have lied to your employers." I need to know what kind of prison this is." He said this as the blood rushed to my head. Why does everyone have open sores over their body and face? Are they exposed to some kind of virus? And if so, are we susceptible? Either that or they're always high on something. They'll explain why they're always speaking gibberish. Also, how in the hell do they know things that I haven't even told the closest people in my life? Better to do your job assigned. Don't worry about things above your pay grade. Buckley pulled out another pack of cigarettes and lit one. I hope we're not exposed to dangers we weren't warned about. I'll have to find a way to get the word out. If you break your non-disclosure agreement, it'd be far worse than termination. Your wife back home, the one with the dark curly hair and nice curves, I hate to see the impact of decisions on her. That was when I grabbed him by the lapels, shoved him to the ground. I considered throwing elbows. The idea of making him taste his own blood was satisfying. I did not want to be incarcerated in this den of misery, though, and of all places. That's when Buckley started to laugh. What he did next took me by complete surprise. He patted me on the back and, with his free hand, instead of trying to defend himself or resist, told me, proving his point. As he pushed on my chest, "Now, get off of me. I don't want to give you the signal to one of my buddies in the next tower. Here's a Mod Remington 700 pointed at you." I released him, and after he stood and brushed some frost off, he made eye contact with me. "I respect your bravery. Most people wouldn't be willing to do that to me, especially someone beneath me in rank. Tell you what, I'll shed a little bit of light on what kind of place this is for you, and if I ever find you told anyone, much rather wish they died at birth. I felt the adrenaline start to wear off as my energy lowered. I nodded, thereby giving tacit agreement to his new offer. I looked to my left and saw a sniper he was referring to. It occurred to me that if he wanted to take action against me, he could have had me executed right then and there. Buckley waved at me to follow him as we made our way down the steps. He escorted me through the yard, ice-encased weight sets and pull-up bars. We followed the chain-link fence to another facility he had coded key access. After he put in the correct digits, he swung the door open. We made our way down the hallway that did not seem modern. There were lit torches on the walls. The flooring was pallid cobblestone. He brought me into another room, which was the size of an auditorium. A man stood up. He wore all black clothing with a white collar. It took me a while to recognize him as a priest. I saw rows of long tables, once fit for a king in an ancient era. Crucifixes, rosaries, chalices of water, and stacks of dusty books lined every corner. I skimmed some of the titles and saw a few were in different languages. Father Lamora, Buckley said as he stared at the man on the cloth. What are you doing down here? The priest pointed to his left. I shifted my eyes in that direction. I did not immediately notice the presence of the fourth person in the room. This one was on the inmates tied down on a slab. As we focused our collective attention on him, the man came to life. He started struggling against his restraints. Red-tinged something poured from his mouth like foam from a rabid dog. I've almost driven the entity out of him, the priest said. Buckley turned to me. I asked him, what's going on here? I had the irresistible urge to run and scream in the other direction. I knew I could not take my chances out in the harshest of the cold. Part of me was willing to at least try. Prison's budget comes from the Vatican. We only take inmates possessed by something greater than the general sadism of psychopathy. In the official government paperwork, we call this place the House of the Demonium. If you want to lay a tone for the sins I know you are guilty of, now would be an excellent time. Help us read the incantation needed to cleanse this heathen. As you guys heard before, I was a correctional officer in a supermax prison. It's near Florence, Colorado. I stayed as an employee there for half a decade. I saw almost anything you could imagine. I'm currently writing this on encrypted Wi-Fi from an undisclosed location. I hope people thinking about becoming prison guards read my story and reconsider. I do not want them to make the future life choices they look back on as a mistake. Our possessed inmates are flown in from around the world. The evening the young girl came to our gates via the bus was an unusual occurrence. The transporting officers rolled her towards me on a gurney. She fought against her restraints and screamed in the dense and layered voice I'd become used to at this point. She wore a tattered and old beige-colored dress. Bloodstains marked her clothing. I made a mental note to try to get her some blankets when she was in her new home. Her name was Anna. There were a few things that made her different from the others. For starters, her eyes were milky. She retained the same faraway gaze they all had, but it was as though her pupils indicated narcotic use. And her eyes never got any clearer during the entirety of the time monitoring her. There's one singular trait that made her stand out from the others. She often quieted down and her yelling once she was in the presence of the staff. The inmates usually never cared who they were in front of unless it was unearthed our secrets to shame us. She minded her manners. This was as alarming as much as it was respectful. Once I placed her in her cell, I knew I had to bind her in the bed after removing her from the gurney. As soon as I unbuckled one of the straps on her wrists, she reached up and tried to claw at my face, and I ducked her strike. I reached towards my belt for a canister. If this were a normal prison, it would have been filled with mace. Mine brimmed with holy water instead. I sprayed it at her. Smoke emanated from her skin as she let loose a cry of anguish. I undid the rest of the straps and moved her to the bed. I shut the door and I went to lunch. The lodging for the employees was 3 separate rows of cabins. The most luxurious ones belonged to leadership. The second most comfortable apartments were the priests. The third, and needless to say the most decrepit, provided shelter for the officers. Even though my space was hardly glamorous, it became my sanctuary. I was able to work out, read paperback books and journals. These activities helped me maintain my mental sanity. I stared at the ceiling and thought of how unsettled I was about the girl. Every inmate had a glimmer of humanity. Something about her made me want to investigate her past. Word spread amongst the employees how there was only one computer in the entire facility. It contained the reports database. It was in our warden's office. Rumor also circulated that he had access to the inmates' rap sheets. Buckley had verified this for me in one of our prior conversations, though it was an accident. I waited until after hours to enter Buckley's space. I managed to bribe one of the janitors with an extra snack. Never underestimate the power of common items in the penitentiary. Buckley had left his computer on without signing out. Navigating the digital database of various inmate profiles was tricky. While I wanted to look up different names, I decided to focus on the young girl. I searched for every Anna until I found the one I was looking for. A few things stood out to me about her right away. The main body of text on her infractions had many redactions. I printed it out and grabbed the papers. Closed the door behind me and headed down the hallway back to the lodging. I read the document on my walk. Even though she was only 20 years old, she was also a nuisance to society. She burned down a halfway house that she was staying at. She was there for many DUIs. Several judges gave her a break. They decided to put her in a mental health facilities instead of jail. She kept assaulting the staff there. The worst of these was when she stabbed the nurse in her jugular. The RN survived, but had to talk through her voice box for the rest of her life. I was right outside my door when I heard a familiar voice. "You're late," Sio Nosu said. I turned around and saw his large frame in the 2 months I had been there. Got to know the man well. He had come here from Arizona State Prison Complex. It swapped similar stories. His tales of the encounters he had with death row prisoners intrigued me. Musu asked me, "What do you have there?" I told him a guidebook on how to perform successful exorcisms. He told me I didn't think you liked working off duty. Let him know what we do, what we have to do. "How did you get it?" "One of us used the internet here." I told him I found it under the seat of the mobile unit. I didn't feel good about falsifying information to appear I had respect for. "Oh, I see. I came to ask if you had any extra coffee, amount I don't want to go all the way to my locker to get some in the morning if I can help it. No problem, I said as I unlocked the door and invited him in. I stuffed the papers under my mattress so he would not be able to read them. I reached into my backpack and I pulled out some instant packets. I gave them to him, and I saw what he stared at my collection of books. At the far end was the Bible. His eyes locked on it. He grabbed the coffee packets and looked at me. Do you believe what they're telling us? I asked him what he meant. About God and the devil. All these biblical villains taking control of all the people here. It seems far-fetched to me. There has to be something more going on. What if this asylum for those people with undiagnosed mental illnesses? The kind researchers aren't advanced enough to understand yet. You ever thought of that? I sat down. I don't think science has the answers. Ones in here are gifted with preternatural abilities. It's like they can read our minds, or at least our past. No matter how secretive we are, I never felt as though I have less power than I do since I came here. All I know is that I can pretend to understand everything, whether it's celestial or empirical. I cannot feign an understanding of the evil within these walls to pretend otherwise is arrogance. Buckley and Nosu, the priest, and I walked together to Anna's cell. We could hear her screaming from within 300 feet distance. The other lamentations of the prisoners became drowned out by her wails. We entered her cell, words written in blood on the wall. They were in Latin. She stared at us with a smile. Her face seemed puffier than usual, which emphasized a wound on her face. The priest pulled out a rusted black crucifix and he raised it in her direction as he approached her. Her screams grew ever so louder with each advancing step. He pulled out a small pocket Bible and read a prayer from it. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all evil spirits who wander through the world for the ruin of souls. Amen. Her eyes became less opaque. I was able to make out the green color for the first time. She gazed at me and spoke intelligible words for the first time since her first visitation. Your mother died an early death because she found out you joined a gang. Anna said with a mocking laugh. I looked around to see if anyone was staring at me with judgment. The expressions were neutral until they turned into worry. Everyone in the room knew they would have to wait their turn for the public humiliation. You accepted a bribe to stay silent after an inmate stabbed another one to death. Nosu muttered something under his breath. He stared. The inmate was a horrible person who mistreated children. He commented on how Earth was lighter than without the presence of such a person weighing it down. You, Anna said as she stared at Buckley. You are the worst out of everyone. Your wife dies by drowning and you receive up her life insurance money. Wait until I look deeper into that. What I saw next horrified me. Buckley screamed out the word, "No!" as he lunged at her, his hands wrapped around her throat before one of her legs broke free from its binding and kicked him in the ribs. He must have forgotten to wear his vest that day because he folded and landed on the ground. The priest placed a cross on her forehead and left a permanent mark there. She passed out in her exhalation, where she lost consciousness and made her body deflate in an unnatural thinness. Buckley had called me into his office the next day. He asked me to take a seat with a menacing tone. He slammed the door and sat behind his desk. Do you even want to work here anymore? I know this employment opportunity is very unique. It's not for everyone. You knew when you became a CO that this type of job requires more mental fortitude than most professions. This isn't any different because we're operating uncharted territory. Have I done something wrong? I asked him. You entered my office after hours. He banged his fist on the table. I don't know what your motivation was, or are you starting to believe what some of these inmates are saying about me? They don't see our sins with full impunity. They know enough about our interior lives, what bothers us enough to get under our skin. It is us versus them. And once you side with the enemy, then you're no good to the team than here. Let alone me. You're running some kind of vigilante investigation against me. You can play at that game. Believe me when I say I don't want to be on my bad side. I told them, if you're gonna fire me, I won't make excuses. You should know I was not trying to get you in trouble or dig up any dirt. I wanted to look up any and all information I could find on Anna. She seemed to be more in control of what possessed her, more than the others. I wanted to figure out what made her so unique in that regard. I figured if I ever wound up possessed, I could weaponize whatever she used. You're like a child, he said as he stood and paced back and forth. Do yourself a favor and stay within your pay grade. The Vatican has hired scientists to study behavior during possessions in the old days. They would have dismissed it as different demons. You don't have a degree in microbiology any more than I do. We are muscle hired to make sure the demonologists are safe when they do their job. So you, do yours. Yes, sir. I felt as though I had backed down and given some sort of sovereignty over me. I also knew if I lied or resisted, he could lead to a loss of money for my family and me. Count yourself lucky, he said, as he sat back down and picked up a pen. Not reporting your mistake to any of my superiors. It did not make me regret giving you this break. Now get out of here before I change my mind. I made my way to the threshold and I faced him as I began to turn the knob. One question, he said. Most inmates come shipped here in groups and never arrived alone. Why was she given special treatment during her transport? Is she a celebrity? Daughter of a famous politician? It's within my rights to know as someone who has a checkup on her. Yeah, it's my daughter, Buckley said as he scribbled on a pad and motioned me to leave.